Bonjour à tous, ravi.
Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to find you all here together in the morning meeting. I would like to have you welcome with me the Prime Minister, Daniel ONA ONDO. Mr. Prime Minister, we're going to be discussing together for about 15 minutes in 3 different parts. First of all, I'm going to begin by introducing you because we have about 50 different countries in this room. And then I'm going to ask you what your vision is of Gabon, and then your vision in a more global sense, for instance, in concerning the Pan-African continent. And then we'll take a few questions from our audience at the end of this conversation. And so you are a teacher of an aggregation of economics. You've been a member of the government for the past 7 years. You've been the Minister of Education, Agriculture, Health. You were the first Vice President of the National Assembly for 7 years. And so we can see that you have a very large vision, a very broad vision, very complete, and filled with the different problems, perhaps, that you can meet with here in Gabon, and perhaps even in terms of the continental level. And today you have been nominated the Prime Minister a few months ago. I believe it was the beginning of the year. And I saw in the press that you were called to be filled with promise. And in other words, the president was sure that you were filled with promise in terms of bringing on these very major reforms, and that I believe that they're really expecting a lot from you in terms of these major reforms that have been confided to you. And since it is my impression, I believe that we're in a Gabon today which is really exploding in terms of changing its patterns. Yes, thank you very much, ma'am. I would like to make 3 remarks. First of all, in terms of the CV that I gave you, I didn't say everything, you know. No, I know you didn't. But the first remark I'd like to make is the fact that I'm a professor who's aggregated. But I think you don't have to be aggregated to be a good economist, because after all, it is a human science economy. And so if we had different models who could give a better model, I think we would not have any crisis in Gabon or in Africa in general or in the world. So it's not an exact science. And I think that in order to play a role in the government, I think you have to have a vision, you have to have a strong willingness, and I think the president of the country has that willingness and that vision. And secondly, for instance, the president is a good politician, and he wanted someone who would have a certain number of qualities, perhaps some political experience, perhaps an intellectual, I have no idea. But he called upon me, and I think what is important is the results that are expected of me. In other words, to be able to fulfill those hopes and also the hopes of the Gabonese people. And so I will have earned a good reputation when I will have solved the problems that exist in Gabon today. And so when you look at my CV, you can be sure that my life is not been a quiet passage from one to another position. Because when I was on the bottom of the pile, I did everything to come to the top. And now, since I've been on the top, I've been doing everything and not to be too much imbued with my own image. But now I'm trying to go back and forth because I want to understand all the different levels of society. And so this is why I'd like to say to the young people who are here in the room today that you've got to really struggle. And it's very important. If you do not struggle, you're not going to get the results that are expected of you. And I'd like to also say, because there is a magazine in Gabon that says that the sugar cane is sweet because it's lots of nuts in it. And so everything, sometimes you want the results immediately, but you have to fight to get those results. And so, you know, people, they're expecting a lot of me. But, you know, I'm here to do a good job, that's all. I just want to do my best. In other words, I'm here to work, and if I have all the different elements that are important, and if all the different conditions are brought together, and then there's absolutely no reason that I should not succeed. But I'm not alone, because first of all, we had the president. Please allow me to ask him a question. You keep talking. Well, first of all, we have the president who has his vision. You have the bank, the government, the central bank, and you have the different people. So I'm not the only person in the traditional African tradition, we cannot say that we alone can come to the results. So now, when you were saying that Gabon is changing, well, yes, of course, because when we say it's changing, it means it's going in the right direction. So I prefer things that are changing than things which are not changing. And so the President of the Republic, he set up a policy when he was elected in 2009, and he spoke of the strategic plan. He had a vision, and he wanted to make of Gabon an emerging country in 2015. He knew he would have to have a strategic plan in order to do so. And so it's like a house. In other words, you have to have a foundation, and you have to build upon something which is very strong. So you mustn't build your building on moving sands. And so if the basement in our country is going to be the human capital, it's going to be the sustainable development. And what is this kind of development? Well, it's economic, social, and environmental. And so therefore, the foundation is good governance. And so if we want to build upon that foundation, we've got the Gabon Green, the Gabon of Services, and Industrial Gabon, and of course the last pillar, which has been hidden. And so you can say, what is a house built on 3 pillars? But of course the last pillar is Blue Gabon. And then, of course, the roof. And we have to share that growth. And this is what the roof of this house is going to be. And this is how the President wants to reply to the expectations of the Gabonese people. Now, I have been told that you've had a meeting with a social meeting with the people, and I believe that was very powerful in terms of the dynamism and also the proposals made by the people and the young people. And what have you been able to do since that meeting based on those proposals? Well, thank you very much. Yes, I believe that meeting was very important in terms of the politics of my country. And I think it was a very important commitment on the part of the President, because we say that the President of the country has a long-term vision and try to make this country an emerging country by the year 2025 now. I think that he's got his feet on the ground, and he's a very practical way of trying to do away with poverty. We've been able to take decisions that are very important that touch all the different aspects of life. Have you already begun taking decisions in that? Yes, of course we have. We have taken lots of decisions that go in that sense, because we're not in the clouds, for instance. We cannot just, the President has often said, we're just tired of just words and words. We want to have acts right now. And so you said that you're going to activate the social pact. And so as an economist, what is your vision, or what is the tie between the social pact and economic growth? Is there a tie between them? Well, yes, we have a tendency to imagine that the economic growth has nothing to do with the struggle against poverty. But we cannot distribute anything if you don't have anything. In order to have revenue, you have to have economic growth. And so this is why the President gave to me the role of trying to insist on economic growth. And of course, we're going to be able to do so. But we have to improve the social condition and to try to improve the distribution in the country. We have to give more to those people who are poor. And I think we've kept that promise. And we're working towards it. And so in that case, you have to go through the idea of economic growth, which, of course, since 2010 is 5 or 6%. Is that enough? Does that satisfy you? Or can you do better than that? Well, I would say for you that there are some Western countries who are very jealous of our 5 or 6% growth. And I think it's in France at 0 point something or other. So I guess we're champions, I think, you know. But I think we need even more growth because the development needs are enormous in my country. And so we're not going to be satisfied with 5 or 6% growth rate. We're going to push that even further. And I think that if we get a 2-figure growth rate, I think that would be much better. And I think we can have that by 2025. So that the role that we have right now, I think, is going to allow us to have a compatible economic growth, which the President has defined. In order to increase that economic growth and to achieve emergence by the year 2025. So what can you do exactly so that that growth can improve? Well, first of all, the economic model that we were using was a bad model. In other words, in terms we were distributing the raw materials, we were sending them all to Europe in sort of their first state. There was no added value or transformation. And so we were really losing a lot of money. And so I think that what we have to do is to see that this is not compatible with the development of African countries. And so today we've taken the decision to transform those products right here in Gabon. And when the president took the decision to transform wood here in Gabon, then of course everybody was angry. Everybody was saying, you can't do that. And of course their interests, their private interests were being affected. But of course, you understand that there was an immediate problem. But today, we can see that there has been many more jobs that have actually been produced because of this transformation of wood in our country. So what we want to do is transform other products. And in addition to woods, we're going to transform manganese in our country. And we're going to go on to other projects. In other words, we want to be able to have lots of products made in Gabon, and I think it's very important. And so it seems to me that the longer the process of transformation is in my country, I think the more added value we're going to have, and so the more jobs we're going to be able to recuperate. So I think this is a good decision. You were talking about raw materials and transformation. In fact, I believe that is the theme of the New York Forum Africa this year. You have a country that is filled with petroleum resources, and also the operations are really not leading to the improvement of living conditions for the Gabonese people. This is perhaps a generalization that we can also extend to other petroleum-producing countries. So how can you explain that, and can we be satisfied with this rich country on one hand because of the petroleum resources, and in other resources, and other very poor figures in terms of the poverty of the population? So is this what we call the petroleum malediction? Well, you're absolutely right. In Gabon, we have a very good per capita income, but in fact, we don't have very good indicators when we talk about the poverty of the population, and we're conscious of that problem. But we have to change the model. First of all, politically, we cannot put all the eggs in the same basket. We've got petroleum, and of course it's producing 80% of the revenue of our budget today. So we've got to change things. We've got to have more transformation, and we've got to diversify the economy. Because also we know that the petroleum industry does not really create that many jobs. And so it's very highly capitalistic in nature. And so these different industries are going to be, they have actually sometimes weakened the country, and because some of the other sectors have been pushed aside and have been non-productive. So I think we've got to sort of recenter our goals and objectives, because I spoke to you of the 3 pillars for our country. And so I think we cannot just be happy with the petroleum receipts today. We've got to diversify the entire economy. And so to diversify this, it means we've got to create a wealth in other sectors. For instance, we go from just a rent economy to a production economy, and we can go to not just using raw materials, but we're going to transform them right here. And so this is what I've been explaining, is that we're doing everything possible today so that everything that we're going to be producing can be actually processed right here in the country. Now, that was a first act concerning the diversification of the economy. And what do you plan to do in order to mitigate this dependency on petroleum? In other words, in addition to the diversification, I saw that you were insisting at the round table on the sovereign funds. Is that also another way that you might be able to help re-equilibrate things in terms of the dependency on petroleum, and also develop the social services? Well, yes. In fact, we do have our sovereign funds, and this is a reserve fund because we sometimes use this revenue, and we've done so in the past. And now we have a vision which is much more long-term in basis. And so if we use all of our different revenue right now in our economy, we'll have nothing for future generations. And so now we can see that this sovereign fund should give more guarantees for the future generations who are young today, and sort of a carryover between the president today and the future. So it will allow us to be able to invest in different value-added activities. For instance, we could take the example of the participation in different companies. Because the fund is quite young, of course. It's just been created. And I believe these are very long-term funds, and the revenue is not very good. But I think it would give us an opportunity to guarantee the revenue in the future. So when we are attached to a particular product, and this product depends upon the international markets, and of course the prices in the international market are not fixed in any way. And sometimes if the prices go down, then of course it's going to be expensive for our economies. And so the prices are good today for petroleum, but it's possible in the future that the price may go down. So in that case, it would give us a certain reserve in order to be able to equilibrate our economy. If we're talking about the diversification of economy and using the sovereign funds to be able to invest in different areas of activities, what is your strategy? And also, what can you simply get the business community to invest in those different activities of diversification, and also get them also some kind of infrastructural problems, perhaps that might be a problem for the business community if they do want to develop activities within the country, and the problems of maybe social problems that might reappear and that might prevent some of the business community to invest here. Well, absolutely, you're right. And so our role as a government is to create a stable environment which would be favorable for foreign investors, because with the lack of savings in our country, we need foreign capital. And so we want to create a stable environment. And I think that the forum today is the sign that the administration now in Gabon is trying to insist upon that idea, because we have a leadership on the part of the governance and the presidency that it's a stable situation. And when we want to attract foreign investors, we cannot attract a dog with a stick, you know. We've got to somehow attract them with food. In other words, we got to offer something to the foreign investors that will allow them to come and invest in our country. And so when I was talking about the foundation of our country, I was talking about the investment in human capital. We've got to set up the different structures, and we also need to have sturdy institutions that are going to be sustainable in nature, and which are not going to be only economic, environmental, and social in nature, but also are going to last through time. And so when we speak of these foreign investments, it's not just going to be done immediately. It's going to take time to develop these different aspects. Okay, so if I'm a Gabonese person, am I going to start seeing something in my immediate environment? Well, you know, the President Bongo told me one day, don't try to make promises to people, just show them surprises. And so I think that if the people, they come along with our policy, I think they're going to have good surprises. And you have discussed the surprises, and you've talked about your strategy. Do you think this very clear strategy that you have just shown me, do you think it can be transposed? Because after all, we're here talking about the continent. Do you think it could be transposed to the rest of the continent? And do you think this strategy could work in other countries in the African continent? Because I think you have some of the same problems as in other countries about not transforming your raw materials. And so this will be for an Africa that's moving in a win-win situation. Well, I can talk about my country, and of course all the African countries don't have exactly the same conditions as Gabon. But if they have a problem with exporting raw materials, then I think that they would have to apply the same strategies as myself. And I think that Africa, if we've seen so many people that have been on this stage and have been talking about the same thing, that we've really got to insist on transforming the raw materials. At the level of the African countries, and of course we've seen this when the discussion of the sovereign funds, and we were talking about the filigrane of this strategy. Do you talk to each other with the different countries? Is it sort of a necessary condition and indispensable so that the entire continent can advance by exchanging among you? Well, obviously, you heard the different presidents who were talking about this together, that we've got to mutualize certain investments in terms of the infrastructure. But of course, Gabon has a specificity. It's a very small country. An economist said that it's almost it's so small, and it's so small a population also. And for instance, we have a high revenue per capita, but when you have that problem, sometimes you have a problem with the distribution of revenue. So we think that with the industrialization, we don't have economies of scale yet, but if we work in a sort of a regional level, I think that we will be able to lead to bigger investments, and I think that that would be very effective, the work on a regional level. Yes, absolutely. I think that this regional framework has not yet been defined, and I think that there's a lot more to be developed and defined at that level. Well, I'm not in the secrets of God myself. I have no idea what's going to be happening in the future, but I know that things do not develop quickly. And sometimes, the Earth turns, but do we actually feel the Earth turning? So I think that all the different presidents that we heard yesterday, I think they're all favorable to the integration of all the different countries and even continents. And but I'm sure there are problems. But of course, I think that Africans are sufficiently mature to be able to meet some of those problems. And I think that if we could just resume what you have said, I think you've said that we've got to encourage economic growth in order to be able to help our citizens of the country and to reduce poverty and the precarity of the different citizens and to have a better distribution of the wealth in the country, and especially by using the sovereign fund also, and also to have a good application of this sovereign fund, which has already begun in different businesses, I believe. And I believe you already said that the strategy of diversification would be very good for Gabon, and we could also apply to other countries in Africa, even if we feel there still is an effort to be made in terms of in this area. There was some questions from the audience now. Behind you, ma'am. Before ending this conversation, we'd like to take a few questions. Yes. Mr. Prime Minister, the Gabonese government has taken two decisions. The first one is to bring up the industry and the infrastructure, and the second one was industrial emergence and growth. What about these two decisions? Do they put a lot of pressure on the public finance? In other words, what message could you transmit to us today in terms of the present investors or future investors to reassure us at that level? Could you please repeat your question, because we didn't hear it very well? You were asking, in other words, that there might be a little bit too much pressure on the part of the public finance, because, in other words, you want to go towards the economic growth and the improvement and the development of industry and also the infrastructure, and perhaps there's a lot of pressure on your public finance. And so what is the kind of a guarantee could you give to future foreign investors to give them a guarantee they're going to be paid? Did you hear the question? Yes, thank you. You know that we're obligated to go through public finance, and we also need help in order to allow us to develop some of that social infrastructure. And of course, we're using our public finance, but there are some sectors where we set up partnerships between the private and the public sectors. And of course, we're encouraging the different sectors to invest, or the different private groups to invest. But of course, if we can help ourselves, then the sky will help us also. And this is what we say. So if we go ahead through this development of industry and the infrastructure, then other companies will come and will want to come with us. And so we think that if people who, for instance, there's a lack of training in some of these different industrial sectors, if we don't have the right training, then of course we cannot offer employees. And so we decided that with the social meeting that any company who had more than 50 employees should actually be responsible for training people. We need people who are well trained. We need to have health systems that are operational. We need to have roads and telecommunication systems. But these are sovereign investments often, which the government is going to have to be responsible for. Okay, we can take a last question that can be asked to the Prime Minister. Right over here. And then we will end the conversation with this question. Thank you. My name is Mr. Casa from the Sociology Department at the Omar Bongo University. So, Mr. Prime Minister, you have missed the question that Christian Kelly was asking when she said, because she asked you a question, when could there be a concretization of the different promises that were made? And you said that that you prefer surprises to promises, but isn't that a policy that consists of simply putting off or postponing the results to a later date and to make the population wait? Well, I think you're a bit pessimistic. I do not share your pessimism because we had some social meetings. The president has taken on a certain number of decisions. We spoke of the increase in the family allowances. That was not just a promise. We did it already. And we said that in the terms of the future generations, we would set up 10 billion CFA for a fund to. We've taken a lot of decisions, and these decisions are now being put into operation. So these are not just words in the air. In other words, what about the family allocations, the increase? But I believe it was at the beginning of the month of June. But it's very concrete. Of course it is. And so these are not just words, you know. Sometimes the Gabonese people, they think that we're not talking directly to them. But, you know, you must have confidence in your country. You must have confidence in your country and in your leaders, because I can reassure you that I was not born a rich person. I was born from a very, very modest family. And if I have been able to do what I've done today, it's through making an effort and my education. And so I think I owe a lot to this country, and I don't think I can mislead this country. And I'm together with the head of the government and the president of the country, and I am convinced that we are going in the right direction. And so I think you have to believe in what we are trying to do, and we're not going to mislead you. I can tell you that. These are not false promises. These are important decisions which are going to see results. Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister.